Welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very interesting episode of Marvel's Avengers 101. Now, as you all may know at this point, the Game Awards did in fact occur just a couple days ago, and while we were expecting some type of trailer to possibly be revealed for either that of Marvel's Avengers or a potential Batman game, neither of those two titles ended up appearing at the awards show in any way, shape, or form, and a little bit more concerning for the case of Avengers, considering that it does come out in almost exactly 5 months. Now, while it has been confirmed from the developers themselves that we will be receiving a full-on deep dive showcase as to how the co-op is going to work within the game sometime in early next year, I'm just hoping that Square Enix can thoroughly promote the entirety of what exactly Marvel's Avengers is going to entail in terms of its gameplay structure, as well as fully inform the player base as to what the entire game is going to feature once it does release on May 15th, 2020. But in the meantime, everyone, while we are still waiting for the next major piece of gameplay footage to drop for the Avengers project sometime early next year, the newest pieces of info that we do have is actually in regards to the game's prequel comics. So just as a small recap for all of you who may be a bit unaware as to what this situation fully entails, is that Marvel's Avengers is going to receive its own lineup of prequel comics that do tie in directly to the beginning of the game's story. Now, based on what we know about the comic series as of right now, this is going to be a 5-issue miniseries with each issue releasing per month, focusing on each individual member of the core Avengers team. And if you've been keeping up with the news, the very first issue of this series did just release a couple days ago, starting off with the Armored Avenger himself with that of Iron Man. And to follow that up in chronological order, the series is in fact going to start off with Iron Man, which then will follow up with Thor, Hulk, Captain America, and then end the series off with Black Widow. So just as a major heads up for all you, this will in fact include spoilers for the Iron Man prequel comic book issue itself, so if you're someone who wants to read it first and then come back to hear my thoughts, I highly suggest you do so. But on the other hand, if you're just someone who wants to know immediately what happens within this issue, I won't keep you waiting any longer. Now, these prequel comics don't just do a good job of setting up what the story is before the events of A-Day within the world of Marvel's Avengers, but it also teases some potential characters that we could see appear within the game as well. And to read the primary synopsis of the Iron Man comic itself, it does state, "Avengers Assemble. The road to Marvel's Avengers begins here, with an all-new story leading directly into the events of the highly anticipated video game. Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, Thor, and Hulk are the mighty Avengers, but as the Lethal Legion strikes, it's going to take more than their usual teamwork to save the day. When Tony Stark discovers his enemies have co-opted Stark technology for nefarious purposes, it's up to him to stop the leak. But can his teammates be trusted, or is something more sinister at play?" So just like the description states, after Iron Man and the rest of the Avengers team finishes battling the Lethal Legion, Tony then goes and does some research as to figuring out who exactly is leaking all of the data relating to Stark Tech. And after a few quick personal chats with some of the other Avengers team members like that of Black Widow and Bruce Banner, he then discovers that Spy Master is actually one behind this entire ploy. And after this short battle between Iron Man and Spy Master is over, Tony then decides to deliver the unconscious villain to the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. himself, of that of Nick Fury. And as it turns out, even though Spy Master was able to collect all of that information on Tony Stark and Iron Man as a whole, he actually ended up receiving it from the S.H.I.E.L.D. databases themselves. This is because that in classic S.H.I.E.L.D. fashion, Nick Fury is in fact keeping major dossiers on all the major Avengers members, just so that way they can have safety precautions in case something major happens as a threat to their organization. And after Tony essentially leaves Nick Fury off with a warning, he does in fact state that he is going to continue being a full team member of the Avengers and making sure that their security does come first. So overall, everyone, this first issue of the prequel comic series for Avengers was at least a good way to dive into what this world of Marvel looks like compared to what we just recently had with Spider-Man PS4, and especially with the wider world of the MCU. Still, in my personal opinion, the dialogue does sound extremely cheesy at some parts during the story, and it did kind of drag the narrative back a bit while I was reading this issue. And again, even though this is supposed to be a fully new iteration of the Avengers characters that we've never seen before, it does extremely look like that they are taking a lot of similarities to what the MCU interpretations of the characters had in strides. But on the flip side, it is extremely cool to see some classic Marvel villains appear within this comic like that of the Beetle and Spy Master, and makes me even more intrigued to see which other villains could appear within the future comics. So to sum it up for all you, I would actually recommend that you do pick up this first issue of the Marvel's Avengers prequel comic just to get a better sense as to what this this world of Marvel is fully going to be like once the game does release, but if I did have to actually rate this comic itself out of 5, I would in fact give it a 3. But again, this is only just the first installment of the Marvel's Avengers prequel comics, which will focus on each individual hero within the team, and next up on the list is actually relating to the God of Thunder himself with that of Thor. So Thor's issue will in fact be releasing sometime within January of next year, and to read the description as to what we can expect within his comic, it does state, Thor's mighty prequel to the upcoming video game Marvel's Avengers. The adventure leading to Marvel's Avengers continues, with an all-new story leading directly into the events of the highly anticipated video game. When the God of Thunder uses his mighty Mjolnir to aid Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, with his latest experiment, why does this lead to an unexpected Asgardian encounter? And a one-on-one battle between Thor and the Green Gamma Goliath known as the Hulk. Is all as it seems, or is an ancient enemy planting seeds of distrust that will bloom into the disassembling of the Avengers? Now, just based on that description alone, it does sound very reminiscent to the first Avengers movie all the way back in 2012, where Thor did have to fight an extremely raged out Hulk on the SHIELD helicarrier. However, I still am interested to see what this experiment Tony Stark is actually going to run that he may need Thor's help to actually fully secure. But to follow up these comics once again, the issue that does release after Thor's is none other than that of the Incredible Hulk, which will in fact launch sometime in February of 2020. And to read the description for this particular comic, it does state Hulk stars in the smashing prequel to the upcoming video game Marvel's Avengers. The adventure leading to Marvel's Avengers rages on, with an all-new story leading directly into the events of the highly anticipated video game. As the Incredible Hulk, the monstrous alter ego of scientist Bruce Banner, he's done good for the world. But with a virtually uncontrollable, gigantic green rage monster always bubbling under his skin, Banner has teamed up with an inquisitive scientist in an attempt to regulate the beast once and for all. As their experiments go deeper, a catastrophic event may spell the end for more than just Banner's curse. Witness crucial incidents and intrigue in the saga tied to the earth-shaking events in the Marvel's Avengers game next year. So once again, in classic Bruce Banner fashion, he is in fact trying to manufacture a cure to get rid of his Hulk side within the Avengers game. And given what we know about the events of the Avengers game after the events of A-Day, it does sound like Bruce Banner is actually going to be trapped in a Hulk-like state after the 5-year events of the A-Day catastrophe. So seeing how it looks like the cure for the Hulk didn't turn out too great, I'm really interested to find out what exactly happens during this particular issue. But as we move on to the second to last comic within this list is none other than that of the super soldier himself with that of Captain America, which in my opinion seems to have the least interesting issue out of all the other characters. And as his comic book description states, Captain America battles Batroc in this new prequel to the upcoming video game Marvel's Avengers. Since World War II, Steve Rogers has fought for the side of good as Captain America. As one of his last friends from the war is laid to rest, Cap must contend with the mysterious robbery of a high-tech weapons company. But what is Batroc the Leaper planning, and how will this technology change the future of the Avengers? The journey to Marvel's Avengers continues with a mystery and an adventure that sets the groundwork for an inciting incident in the upcoming video game, which this issue does in fact release in March of next year. Now, if anything, I could see this issue of Captain America trying to lay one of his old war veteran buddies to rest actually possibly being Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. But the fact that he's going to fight a very D-list Marvel villain with that of Batroc the Leaper is just a bit laughable to say the least. But who knows, this issue could possibly provide us some context as to what the new Terrigen reactor within the Avengers helicarrier could possibly source from. And to finalize, the very last comic of the Marvel's Avengers prequel tie-in series is actually relating to the super spy herself of Black Widow, which funny enough also releases in March of 2020. And as the description states for her comic, the super spy stars in the final adventure before the launch of Marvel's Avengers. Former Russian spy Natasha Romanoff has joined S.H.I.E.L.D., but when a specter from her past resurfaces, where do her loyalties really lie? And what is the source of her deadly feud with the villainous Taskmaster? Solve the mystery in this adventure leading up to the upcoming Marvel's Avengers video game as we explore a key episode from the dramatic saga of the woman called Black Widow. So I do personally think that Black Widow's issue being the last installment of this prequel series does make the most sense, considering how we are going to directly fight Taskmaster at the beginning of the game during A-Day. And given that it does seem like Taskmaster and Black Widow do have some sort of connection from the past, I will be very interested to read about what that exactly is within her prequel issue. Now, while that may be everything relating to the Marvel's Avengers prequel comics, there is one aspect about their release dates which does intrigue me the most. So to read recap once again, Iron Man's issue is currently out in stores, whereas Thor's issue does release in January of 2020, Hulk's issue February of 2020, but Captain America and Black Widow's prequel comic issues both release in March of 2020. So you would think that considering that each of these characters is going to receive their own unique individual prequel comic and the game itself does release in May of 2020, you would think that Black Widow's issue could possibly release in April. But considering how both Captain America and Black Widow's issues are releasing in March, I do think that they are possibly saving some space for the possible release date of the game's beta. And knowing that a majority of online games betas do release at least a month or so in advance before the official game releases, I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that the Avengers beta could release sometime in early April. And due to the fact that PS4 owners are able to access the Marvel's Avengers beta a full week early before any other console owner, I do think it would make the most sense if they released the beta in early April instead of that of middle April. But regardless, there is going to be a lot of upcoming content relating to expanding the narrative of Marvel's Avengers before the full game releases in May of next year, and hopefully you guys do enjoy it even more than I did when reading these comics. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. Which prequel comic are you looking forward to reading the most, and do you think there is a highly likely possibility that the beta for Marvel's Avengers could release sometime in April of 2020, 1 month before the game releases in that of May? For me personally, I really am digging the overall story arc that seems to be featured within Thor's comic, but I do like the cover art for the Black Widow issue the most. And if anything, if I did have to lay out a specific percent chance as to how much I think we could see the beta appear within April of next year, I am going to say either a 80 or 85% chance that it could happen. But whether or not that turns out to actually be guaranteed, we'll just have to wait and see. And until that time comes, everyone, thank you all so much for watching, stay merry Marvelites, and peace out.
I'll finish this, Thor excitedly said.
Unfortunately, Thor should have gone for the head.
Yeah, he blew it.
Thor.
He still got close enough to him to actually go for something, unlike the rest of the pathetic little useless Avengers who didn't even really put a scratch on him.
I mean, they really should have just called me. I could have got this done real quick. You know what I mean?